Good evening, everyone. Thank you for sticking with us, waiting with us as we provide you with the latest update. We have a new 8 p.m. update from the National Hurricane Center with the latest on Helene, the intensity, its location, and where it's going, and of course, how strong it will be. And we will dive into all of those numbers over the course of the next few minutes. I first want to make sure that we get through what's going on outside right now, and there is a lot of rain that has been occurring over the course of the last couple of hours. We have been tracking a cold front advance towards our area, and that has caused widespread rain and some thunderstorms. If you were with us earlier this afternoon, we actually had a tornado warning in extreme northeast Georgia, Habersham County and Rabun County. This has pretty much nothing to do with Helene. This is all courtesy of that boundary that is moving through our area. Of course, those impacts will start to change as we head through the next few hours. Something that we're going to be watching very closely is the rainfall rates, because this is pretty much just a conveyor belt of moisture that is just riding this boundary through our region. So some of these areas are just going to get pounded with rain. They've been getting pounded with rain, and we have a flood warning that has been in effect for portions of Troup County, Meriwether County, Upstate County. Looks like they're going to allow that warning to expire prematurely, which is good news, but still it has been a very, very wet day. And unfortunately, this rain is going to continue through the overnight. Good evening. Wesley's checking in from Ackworth, Georgia. Ackworth, we see you in the house. Let's get to Hurricane Helene, the latest. As of the 8 o'clock update, winds sustained at 85 miles per hour. This storm is moving towards the north at about 12 miles per hour. So not much of a change since earlier in the intensity or that forward speed. But something that came down the pipeline at 5 o'clock, and this was something that we had been seeing in the First Alert Weather Center for the better part of, I'd say, the last 18 hours. A lot of the data that was coming in was hinting that these winds could be stronger with the system, specifically if it had little or limited interaction with the Yucatan Peninsula, and that has occurred. It has passed through, and it had limited interaction, so the core is completely intact, and it's been intensifying since then. So we expect this now to be a Category 4 hurricane at landfall with winds sustained at 130 miles per hour. That is a powerful storm that is going to be making a beeline towards the Big Bend region of the Florida coastline. So this is going to make landfall somewhere to the east of Panama City. Looks like folks like Destin, you're going to be just to the west of that. North of Tampa, you're going to be on the east side of this. So while the landfall may be north of you, those impacts will be spread far and wide. And something else that occurred with today's update. Whenever the National Hurricane Center upped that forecast for the landfall, that also increase the forecast as the storm moves inland, because the dynamics of the system hasn't changed. The atmospheric conditions, the synoptic environment hasn't changed. So this is going to be a fast moving storm when it starts to move through Georgia, racing roughly at about 30 miles per hour. So it is going to have a lot of intensity with it as it is moving through. Storms always weaken when they move inland, but if it's not moving slow, a lot of folks are going to feel those impacts. The tropical storm force winds extend something like 350 miles away from the center of this storm in some places. So this is going to be a massive storm as far as producing some of those strong winds, sustained near 40 miles per hour, gusting upwards of that. So this is going to be a concern for all of us, especially considering the fact that this is going to be moving through the metro pretty strong. And reference points, you could think back to Zeta. This system could be a little bit stronger than Zeta was. A lot of folks have been talking about Opal. It's taken a similar type of trajectory, not the same track, but it's given us a similar setup, except Opal was just slightly more to the west. But with this newest update, it does look like we're going to be at least in a position to get some of the stronger winds from this across a large chunk of North Georgia, easily getting tropical storm force winds with this system as it lifts through. Feel free to drop in the comments. I know a lot of folks are watching us on YouTube. Some of you are watching us at home. If you do have any questions, we'll try to get to those questions as we see them come in. If you do have the First Alert Weather app on your phone, you probably got the notification this afternoon that you're not under a tropical storm warning, and that's because tropical storm conditions are going to be possible within the next 24 hours across our area. This will start obviously in the southern and easternmost part of our viewing area and lift northward throughout the day. That just means that those sustained winds are going to be 39 miles per hour or greater at times as we head through this period. And we still have to deal with the rain. We still have to deal with this frontal rain at its boundary. It's sticking around, just funneling moisture through our area. This is going to be with us through midnight and even beyond. It should gradually shift further to the east as we get into the early morning hours, but essentially the tropical system is going to start to lift north and bring moisture with it itself. That moisture is going to interact with that boundary, and that's just going to cause it to almost feel as if the rain is going to be continuous as we head through the next 24-hour period. So expect scattered showers around tomorrow morning. And I know that a lot of the messaging has been about Thursday. You know, we live our lives. We hear clips and phrases, not just referencing songs or whatever, but we hear clips and phrases, and Thursday sticks out. While it will be dreary, it will be rainy all day Thursday, the worst part of Thursday will actually be late evening into the overnight period. It's going to be that evening period through early Friday morning that is going to be the worst. So expect scattered rain. You'll be able to get out of the house tomorrow to get all your errands done as long as you have an umbrella or a raincoat, because it's just going to be messy. The winds are going to be a little bit breezy tomorrow, but they really don't pick up until late in the evening. Let's get you into the Thursday hour-by-hour forecast, and you can see that this moisture will continue to build up. The 7 o'clock forecast calls for scattered showers and rumbles of thunder. As we get closer to lunchtime, you can see some of those thicker bands start to lift northward, some heavier downpours, some lightning for sure, moving through the area. 2, 3 o'clock, I've seen so far that a lot of schools have closed. I don't have that list in front of me, but I know that that list is on our website. So if you're looking to check to see if your school is one of those schools that are closed, you can always go to atlantanewsfirst.com and you can see that on the homepage. There's going to be a list there for you. But some kids, school hasn't been canceled yet. So it's going to be a messy afternoon commute. You thought it was messy this evening. The rain today was rain. We had radar confirmations of at least 2 inches in some places. We were looking at observations at the airport. We picked up already nearly 2 inches of rain, and there's more to come. So this is just going to be a messy Thursday afternoon into the evening hours, and those bands will get thicker. You'll start to see those darker oranges, the reds. That's where we're really going to get closer to the core of this system, and that's going to happen early Friday morning. Getting out Friday morning, if you're trying to, a lot of rain, a lot of downpours. That's going to be a part of the issue, but it's also going to be windy. We'll get into that. The rain sticks around through about 10, 11 o'clock and then starts to lift northward. We trend drier as we head into the morning. I'm going to take a pause just for a second to get into the comments because I see a lot of comments. So Wesley's checking in from Ackworth. Good evening, Wesley. Love it when you join our stream. Caleb, hey, Patrick. I saw you were on our stream 2 nights ago. Welcome back. Cameron, recommendations for folks in downtown Atlanta for the next few days. Okay, so I do what I did. I got water. I didn't get a bunch of cases. It's just me, so I just needed a couple bottles, because I want to make sure that I have enough water just in case there are any issues. Once again, we're talking about flooding, so I always think, what would I need? What could impact me the most? Once again, not hyping, not trying to cause a stir, but those are the type of things you have to think about. Get a couple, if it's just you, get a gallon of water, get 2 gallons of water. No more than that, you don't need cases. Make sure that you have non-perishable foods just in case the power goes out. For me, I'm a snacker, so as long as I have something to snack on, I'm good. So I got me some Ritz crackers and some peanut butter. Simple, easy. I can live off of that for a day. 2 days, maybe. 3 days, probably not. But that's all, and just be prepared for it. If you live in a high rise and you're good with that, it's gonna be a little windy. So if you're okay with a little wind, that's fine. I do believe that based off of the current trajectory for the track of this system, the biggest potential for there to be brief tornadoes is gonna be in far east Georgia. So if you're in Atlanta, you're probably gonna be okay with that. If the track shifts further west, then that risk shifts closer to Atlanta. But for now, you're good with that. Other than that, man, I just say buckle up. If you can work from home, do that. If you have to go into the office and they're still wanting you to go in, go in. Pay attention, every morning, not trying to plug our news channel, but our news channel, every morning we have weather and traffic. Throughout the morning show, we tell you where the accidents are. If there's trees down, we're going to have reporters at the trees pretty much telling you, hey, this is a mess. And if the language is that there are issues, which that would probably be Friday morning, not tomorrow morning, just so we're clear, we will be the first to tell you, and you'll be able to plan your day accordingly. But I wouldn't stress out about that at all. Our whole goal is to just make sure you know that this is what we're looking at, and the data suggests that whenever we get this much rain, this much wind, this is what happened. 5 to 10 inches of rain, 60 miles per hour winds, power outages are probably likely. So whatever being without power looks to you, that's what I would do. I have my water, I have my crackers, and I have some cookies too because I'm an Oreo guy. I have my Oreos, I have my iPad, I have my portable charger charged, and I have my flashlight, and I'm good. Good. Hey, Derek, welcome to the chat. Are we going to see a hurricane warning in Atlanta if this hurricane can be a Cat 5 in Florida? Right now, we're going with Cat 4, Tanya. With this system, I do think that it is possible that there could be hurricane force winds in middle Georgia. I do think that's a likely scenario for folks in places like Macon. Right now, based off of the data that we're seeing, it should be a tropical storm force wind storm by the time it makes its way into Atlanta. Pisces, heading to Atlanta from PCB. You're gonna have to forgive me. I've only been here, Pensacola Beach. I know that Panama City Beach. Oh, Panama City Beach. Okay. So if you're heading from, see, look, that's why I have producers here for me. Digital producer, get me in line. Panama City Beach. If you're heading here, when are you heading here? That's gonna be the bigger question. If you're heading here tonight, you're okay. If you're heading here tomorrow, you're just gonna have a wet and windy ride, and I wouldn't do it. Good evening, Mako Tech, Ackworth here too. Abizdiad, I'm gonna try Abby's dad, maybe. Asks, should they stay home from work tomorrow? Absolutely not. I'm gonna go to work tomorrow. You should too. If you get off at 5, you get off way earlier than me, so it'll be rainy, it'll be a little breezy, but you'll be fine going to work tomorrow. Friday is the day that I think will be in question for some people as far as going to work. But yeah, I think you're going to be okay. Caleb, ever since 12 o'clock lunchtime, my bus driver said there was a microburst in someone's neighborhood. We had some very, very strong winds in extreme northeast Georgia today. Rabun County, Habersham County, we had a tornado warning, so that was a very aggressive storm. So if they were in that area, and I actually think that storm started to intensify in Hall County, started to get pretty strong in Hall County, and me and Chief Meteorologist Jennifer Valdez, First Alert Meteorologist Fred Campagna, we were actually watching this storm as it was growing in the Weather Center. That's why we were able to get on TV so fast. But if it was in one of those counties, that could have been the storm that your driver said they had some wind in. Has Atlanta ever had a Category 1 hurricane? I know that we've had, for sure, tropical storm force winds here. I did not look for examples of hurricane force winds because our forecast isn't calling for that. But I will look for that, and we will have that information for you the next time we stream. No problem, Cameron. Somebody has made them a nice little YouTube name. I see that. Houses are not prepared for a Category 1 force. Hurricane, what's that? He'll charge. Okay. Alrighty, so let's get back into this forecast because I think I've answered the questions. So we trend drier as we head past Friday. I do believe that winds are going to be a problem, especially when you factor in all of this rain, this saturation. We are technically under a flood watch right now until Friday. 5 to 10 inches of rain, that causes major flooding. And I want to make sure that I explain what that means. I was having this conversation with a couple of our producers because, we have chats. The producers are the ones, they're basically like the artist of the show. They create the tempo, they create the story that we're telling. They organize that story. It's kind of like their take on the news of the day, so to speak. And we were talking about, 5 to 10 inches of widespread rain. What does that mean? Obviously, we can't tell you how much rain is going to be in your backyard, but we can tell you is the synoptic environment, the large-scale environment, what we see coming. And what we can see is that there will be more areas that fall within that 5 to 10 inch rainfall total than not. And that could lead not only to flash flooding, low-lying areas that are always problematic. We mentioned some of those on the stream a couple of nights ago, but also something that's called aerial flooding, which just means creeks, rivers, streams, all of those things can rise. And I know that we've been talking about being in a drought, and so a lot of those rivers and creeks and streams are low. But whenever you have this much water coming over this widespread of an area and you start to factor in runoff, all of these creeks and streams could rise really quickly. And we already have a couple of streams and creeks that are forecast to at least get to minor flood stage. That's just based off of what we're seeing now. They would crest sometime on Saturday, so Saturday would be the peak whenever all of that runoff would finally get into those places. So if you live in one of those areas where when it rains a lot, that starts to happen, I would already be kind of prepared. What does this normally look like for us? Do we have to make any adjustments? Maybe go to uncles, maybe go to aunts, maybe go to sister brothers, whoever. I would be in the process of making those plans just based off of the potential for this runoff to happen. But let's dive into beyond the flood watch. Let's dive into these rain totals. Now, this is raw model data, so this is going to shift back and forth. But you can see that most of these values fall somewhere between the 5 to 10 inch rainfall totals guidance that we've been saying. And there are some spots, especially at higher elevations, where we could see the mountains cause an increase in precip. That happens, it's basically because of lift. The mountains cause lift. Whenever you get lift, you get rising air, and that can eventually lead to cloud growth and then storms, rain, all that good stuff. So we do expect some of these totals to be a little bit higher in the mountains, and the models will shift a little bit back and forth, but roughly 5 to 10 inches is what we're expecting across the region. As far as winds are concerned, I think tomorrow morning is going to be fine. A little breezy, 10, 15, nothing to really write home to mom about. As we head into tomorrow night, Thursday night, that's when those winds really start to kick up. That's where we're looking at the potential for there to be 40, 45 miles per hour wind gusts, especially in the eastern part of the state. Now, this is all, once again, based off of that track. If the track shifts 20 miles in any direction, these stronger winds shift in that direction. So that's something that we're going to continue to fine tune. As we get data, we break it down for you, and we show you that. As we head into the early morning hours Friday, you can see some of these winds peaking 2 a.m., 55, 60, 65 miles per hour, near 70 in Eatonton. We fully expect some of these stronger wind gusts to be in our southeastern most viewing areas. So that's going to be folks that are in places like Clark-Oconee County, folks that are in like Jasper-Putnam counties, Greene County, Oglethorpe County. Those places are going to see some of the stronger gusts just based off of what we're seeing right now. The track is going to be very, very important. We've been mentioning that there's the potential for short-lived tornadoes with this system because it's pretty much true with all landfalling cyclones, but it's pretty much dependent on where the track passes, where the center of the system moves, because typically the most tornadic part of a tropical storm, hurricane, is going to be that easternmost flank, the right side of the storm. So the further west that system shifts, the further west the risk for tornadoes shift. Right now, the greatest potential looks to be in East Georgia. So take that with a grain of salt because we're still fine-tuning that track. You know, that cone of uncertainty is still, it's shrunk a little bit over the course of it. And we'll get back to that in just a couple of minutes for everybody that's just joining the stream. But that cone has shrank, so that has also shifted, we've shifted a little bit to the west. If that continues, then, that brings more folks could be under that risk. Right now, it's not in the worst situation for us. It's not. Winds are still going to be breezy on the backside of this system. Despite that storm racing off to the north, we should still have 20, 30 miles per hour wind gusts into the evening hours. Eventually, those winds will relax as we head through the overnight. So the first alert weather day is in place for Thursday and for Friday because of all of this rain, all of this wind. And then eventually we trend drier for the weekend. So I know that it's like a secondary thought to like 95% of us, but for everybody who's trying to plan, watching football on Saturday and yada, 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 that forecast has improved and the rain chances are pretty much negligible at that point. And then we trend cooler into next week. Let me get a couple of questions. Let me get back into the chat. Seems like north of the center is encountering a little bit of shear. There is a little bit of shear, but it's about to move into a slightly less sheared environment. Owl on the prowl. It's going to be moving into a less sheared environment, and it's going to be moving into an area where the water is actually warmer. Not only warmer at the surface, but warmer way down into the Gulf. And I mentioned this in the stream the other day, and I think I said it really fast, and I didn't spend time on it. I mentioned that the deep warm waters of the Gulf of Mexico, and someone kind of made a sarcastic comment. But what I meant by that is, so hurricanes get their energy, their fuel from something called latent heat. You get it from warm water, essentially. It's through a process that happens in the atmosphere, but it feeds off of that latent heat. And the warmer the water is, the more latent heat exists, okay? And whenever you get churning of water due to tropical systems, the warm water gets pushed out essentially in one direction, and water from below comes to the top. And in theory, in some places where you only have shallow warm water, the water that comes to the top is cooler. But if the water is still warm, because it's a deep plume of warm water, then that's just like an endless source of gasoline. And that's why a lot of times whenever you look at systems that move over certain parts of the Gulf of Mexico, you get this rapid intensification cycle. Now, it's not that simple. It has a lot to do with the structure of the storm. It has to do with like a lot of the other environmental components like wind shear and all of that stuff. But that is a big part of it because there's the gasoline for it. You know, if you only have a little bit of gas, you can only go so far. But if you got a lot of gas and you're in the right car and there's no issues with the battery, there's no issues with the tires, then you can go for a while. And that's the same type of mentality. So let's see. I'm going to ask my producer, Jordan, to help me out because we do have a special number that you can text if you lose power. And he is sending that number over to me. So in case you guys lose power, we're going to be streaming pretty much throughout this event. We're going to have folks here manning the station. A lot of folks are shifting their schedules so that we can keep everybody informed. How high will the winds be in West Georgia, out in Villa Rica? So, Ruse Coop, great question. Right now, the further west you are, based off of the current track, the more relaxed the winds will be, but you're still going to get tropical storm force wind gusts. So whereas a lot of folks closer to Atlanta and points to the east could see that 50 to 60, even gusting to 70 or 80, you're going to be more in that 30 to 50 gusting to 60. And that's going to be at the peak, and that's going to be late Thursday night into very early Friday morning. So if you are concerned about potentially losing power, you can text STORM to 470-777-9680. Once again, 470-777-9680. We will be streaming for you. You can also download the Atlanta News First app because we're going to be streaming on there too. You can always catch your live streams there. But let's get back to the comment section. Let's see. See, I got that question. Can this move back east so we don't get the rain or wind? Can we get some good news? Tanya, good news would be great. We would all love for this system to shift further east. If the weather gods would just move it 100 miles to the east, we can get a little bit of that wraparound rain to help us with our drought, but that's not looking like the setup. To be quite frank, a lot of the ensembles, a lot of the models that we've been looking at have trended it closer to this westernmost trajectory. So that has been, the confidence continues to increase on the rain totals being, widespread 5 to 10, because we already picked up a couple today, but it also continues to increase on the potential for there to be 50 to 60 miles per hour sustained winds moving through North Georgia, including Metro Atlanta, with gusts that could be as high as 70, maybe even up to 80, like in places like Jasper, Putnam counties, out in Greene County, Oglethorpe County. So that's something that we'll continue to monitor. Let's see. There's an important football game Saturday. The Storm needs to get on out. Go Dogs. I saw something. Go Dogs, roll tide. I see all that in the comments. Y'all are so silly. Freckles, how high will the winds be in Seminole, Florida? I'll be honest with you, because we have, this is a situation that happens every few years for us as far as getting tropical storm force winds. A lot of our focus has been on our folks here in North Georgia, so I haven't even really focused a whole lot on the Florida impact, just because in theory most of the folks that reach us petty. So I have more information for you all. Once again, if you are looking to stream us in case you lose power, that number is 470-777-9263. One more time, 470-777-9263. 6-3. I apologize. All righty. If the power goes out in ATL, nothing will be left. Jim, we've been without power before here in Atlanta, and I think we'll be able to be okay. Flooding in Tennessee, Virginia. Just want to say thanks for answering the questions. It's very helpful. No problem, Doc. That's what we're here for. We love this. We love this chat because it allows us to actually talk to you guys and get some information. And a lot of times whenever you guys say stuff and we just kind of laugh and it's kind of petty or whatever, we know what you want. Like asking about the football game, we know We know that's important, but also answering these specific questions about West Georgia, East Georgia, North Georgia, South Georgia, it's good for us. No problem, Abby's dad. I'm here for you. Red Open House can withstand. Yeah, I'm hoping that we all get through this. What changed to cause the increase from Cat 3 to a possible Cat 4 at landfall? Great question, Stephanie. So we've been looking at a lot of the data, and to be quite honest, a lot of the models were struggling with what would happen when the system passed by the Yucatan Peninsula, right? The Yucatan Peninsula is a land. Some of the models were bringing the western edge of the center of the low onshore. Some was passing the whole low onshore. Others were keeping it out in the Caribbean, moving it to the Gulf. The more interaction that a system has with land, specifically the core of the system, it takes a beating. It actually kind of deteriorates it a little bit. And then by a little bit of a deterioration, it takes longer for that system to build back that core so that it can move into a more favorable environment and intensify. Because the system literally moved in between, it had very little interaction with the Yucatan Peninsula, Cancun, so to speak. There was nothing to really slow down the intensification process. And a lot of the guidance, we don't show you some of the stuff that some of the models say, but we look at well over 100 models outputs, well over 100 model results, whether that's looking at the 50 ensemble members of the GFS, the Euro, looking at the ICON, the HER, everything. All of these models, they have a lot of different resolutions, and a lot of the resolutions, specifically with some of the new hurricane models, they were showing us that at one update, the storm could interact with land and only be a Cat 1 hurricane at landfall. And some of the other ones were saying that it could be a Cat 4. Some were saying a Cat 5 at one point. And there's still a couple that are saying that. But our whole goal is to filter through all of that nonsense, that mess. And if you were with us over the course of the last couple of days, whenever the National Hurricane Center said 2, we were like, it's saying 2, but we're thinking it could be stronger. Yesterday, when it was Cat 3, we were like, it's saying 3, but it could be stronger. Now we're saying 4. 4 looks to be likely. It could still intensify slightly before landfall. It could be a higher 4, but we do think that 4 is a good number just based off of the consensus of the data. But it has a lot to do with the interactions that system had with land as it was moving through that very small area. Not to mention it just it's organized better. There was a lot of dry air that was kind of sinking into the westernmost side of the storm about a day ago, and that has essentially dissipated. One more time, Jordan? Mention the roundtable. Okay. All righty, so this has been great, guys. I got some plywood and some water. I'm good. Yes, Tim, you are good. Let's see. Jason is saying that he has the Atlanta News First app and he can stream it on there. It's awesome and free. Thank you. I wish I could say that I was in charge of it being free, but it is awesome because I get all of my news there. And whenever I am actually away from the station and I want to see what's going on, I can always stream the news live there. And if there is a power outage, once again, if there is a power outage, all you have to do is go to that app and you can stream on the app our newscast. We will be covering the storm. We will be guiding you through it. We will be giving you a look at your neighborhood that doesn't require you to get outside into the mess. All righty. Alrighty, so I think I've answered all the questions. Guys, so I work for an amazing company. It's called Gray Media. We have tons of meteorologists all across the country, and our very own Fred Campagna is actually joining a roundtable with a bunch of other meteorologists across the Southeast, all of which will be impacted by this storm. And if you're looking to get a deeper dive into what this storm is going to be doing, not only at home, but it's going to be doing there, you can actually check out that roundtable.
And also internet facilities across the United States, over 120 stations. And what better way to get a handle on what this storm is doing and kind of get more accurate information from experienced meteorologists across the Southeast. And again, we are going to be talking about this storm. First, now joining me live on the, again, we call it the Media Roundtable, right? The Meteorologist Roundtable. We have Fred Campagna, Atlanta. and you are at WANF. And we have Jamie Ertl, who's a regular now at WTOC in Savannah, Georgia. We appreciate you guys joining us, and we may have more people coming online. I see we have one listener, I think, from Michigan, all the way up in Michigan, kind of keeping an eye on things as well. This storm, I've got a graphic up right now, you guys, that is showing the satellite imagery and all the watches and warnings across Florida with the latest cone on it. This storm, as you guys have been following and broadcasting on your television stations, is going to become a rather large one, to say the least. And Fred, especially as I play the cone and move it into motion up into Georgia, something that very rarely happens there. Fred, why don't you talk a little bit about that and what it means for your viewers and the people watching right now across the digital world?
Absolutely, Bob, and thanks for having me on the roundtable this evening. And this is the word that I've been using a lot this week, has been unique, because this storm is going to take a track that we don't often see here in North Georgia. Typically, and I look back at 100 years worth of storm tracks, storms that do make landfall south of Tallahassee in that Big Bend area, if they're coming out of the Gulf of Mexico, almost all the time head through the southern part of Georgia and then into South Carolina or back out into the Atlantic Ocean, somewhere in the direction of where Jamie is in Savannah. And this is very unique to have a storm that is basically going to make landfall south of Tallahassee and then move straight to the north, take an overnight trip right up through the state of Georgia, going at about 30 miles an hour. And when we factor in that this is projected to be a Category 4 hurricane at landfall, this is about as close to a worst case scenario, I think, as we can get in North Georgia, in the Atlanta metro area. And to make matters worse, Bob and Jamie, we are getting what is called a predecessor rain event right now. Hartsfield-Jackson, most of us have been there at one point or another, even if we're just passing through, especially if you live in the Southeast, has already received 3 inches of rain today from a storm. Well, not directly connected to a storm. It's actually, and you guys know this, and we could talk about it, it's connected to the trough that is going to steer this storm in this very unique path and right up in our direction. And there is tropical moisture now feeding into that trough. We've seen heavy rain all day. We had a tornado warning earlier in northeast Georgia. 3 inches of rain already at Hartsfield-Jackson. The center of Helene is still about 750 miles south of Atlanta, and we will not feel the effects of the core of the storm until tomorrow night, and late tomorrow night, really, as far as the winds picking up in our area. So, as we spend time here on the roundtable, and I will get into more specifics about exactly what we're expecting here, Bob, but I think it's safe to say, we've been around for a little while. We've seen a lot of storms, and this one slightly different than what we've had in the past, especially when you consider the storms that have hit the Big Bend area over the last couple of years did not take the same type of track that this one is projected to.
Yeah, I appreciate that. That's some interesting insight into this storm. A lot of people don't realize that they typically do bend off into the Atlantic when they reach the Panhandle and move through South Georgia. This one taking a different track because of that trough, and they're kind of doing a Fujiwara. I saw that a couple of times, Fujiwara effect with a low pressure. That's where the two low pressure areas kind of dance around each other. And this one's going to be drawn that way. This is amazing. It looks like an I-75 hurricane, basically. It's going right up I-75.
It's crazy. Yeah, Georgia 400, right up through Atlanta. And the Fujiwara, it's like a little seesaw effect that happens with an area of low pressure dropping in behind the storm and kind of pulling it up to the north and then eventually to the northwest. The other thing is the speed of the storm, moving at 30 miles an hour when it does get into Georgia, it is not going to have a lot of time to weaken. So the crunch time, and I'm sure Jamie's going to want to weigh in on this as well, is the next 12 to 18 hours when this storm is over those really warm waters of the Gulf of Mexico. And whether we see rapid intensification with this storm. A lot of the hurricane models are anticipating it. We're seeing some big numbers as far as max winds go on some of those hurricane models, Jamie. So this is the critical point here, I think, in the next 24 hours, because if it is in fact a major hurricane when it reaches the coast of Florida, it's big problems, even down in Savannah area.
You know, Fred, you mentioned that, category 4, worst case scenario. The worst case scenario to me would have been, and it still could happen, it could become a category 5 prior to landfall. I mean, that's not out of the question. And
Absolutely.
the speed that it's moving, we have to be very concerned with our capital in Tallahassee, which looks like is going to take a direct hit, and the winds will be much stronger there. And I don't think I've ever seen a storm moving that fast, that strong, go into directly Tallahassee. So that's going to be interesting. Jamie, you are there, obviously in Savannah. You talked about yesterday, you're going to get that non-frictional effect wind wrapping around into the storm. And obviously you've had rainfall and you were covering tornadoes yesterday. What's the status and what are you guys looking at?
You know, I think a lot of people with that 5 o'clock advisory really started to pay attention who haven't been paying attention that the storm was still going to be a category 1 heading straight up Albany. Now, even though the cone and the hurricane force winds only extend out about 25 miles from the center of circulation, and that doesn't reach 75, this storm is as large as Georgia and South Carolina, with tropical storm force winds extending out 345 miles, and that's well into the Atlantic. And when you have that wraparound moisture, that's when storms off the Atlantic gain strength, and that's why speeds from Baxley to Tybee Island will see 50 to 60 mile per hour wind gusts overnight. And we do actually have one county in our viewing area that is under a hurricane watch. And I saw some of the highest wind gusts in Jeff Davis County, Hazelhurst specifically. This is what we call blueberry country in Georgia. A few counties in our southernmost viewing areas do produce the most per capita blueberries in the state. But so when I reference that, we're talking about 79 mile per hour wind gusts in those specific areas. And it's still pretty high. It's a big swath. I was trying to tell people earlier in the forecast, kind of a week out, listen, we're going to have tropical storm force winds, but that's 39 to 73 mile per hour. That's a big difference. So now we're trying to hone in on those specific wind gusts throughout the coastal empire and low country. And we really want people to listen, even though still we've got people focusing on the cone and the track that's going up 75. To Fred's just talking about Atlanta weather, I looked last night because I have a really good friend who lives in Alpharetta, and I said, I look for it because I haven't been focusing on Atlanta, of course. Y'all are going to get so much more rain than Savannah and South Carolina. We're talking about, we went high end on Monday, 3 to 5 inches. Now we've kind of scaled back to 2, maybe 4 in some places, especially in our western communities. 10 inches in Atlanta, I mean, way, way higher than us.
Yeah,
like I said,
yeah, Fred, you're absolutely right. And you just said you had 3 inches today. So go ahead, take it away. I'm focusing in right now with the rainfall graphic, which shows the accumulation of Atlanta showing their plus 9, 10 inches of rain.
Right. Yeah. And that's consistent among the computer models. And we were hopeful that the computer models were going to be a little bit overdone on their projections for the rain today, and they really weren't. So when you see the first part of the storm come to fruition like this, and you know that we're getting even more heavy rain overnight, those 6, 8, 10-inch rainfall totals are going to be pretty common. I think that the unlucky few may get 15, 18 inches of rain over the next 36 hours or so as this storm gets closer and then passes by. Because as we know, when the core of a hurricane comes close, you can get 3-inch, 4-inch per hour rainfall totals that come as it's just absolutely torrential tropical rain. And Jamie, I want to harp on one of the things that you talked about, and I think it's so important with this for folks who live down in your area and just southeast of our area, which is the cone and being outside of the cone. So Athens right now, Georgia, outside of the cone. Augusta, Georgia, outside of the cone. Probably going to get some of the worst conditions in middle and north Georgia of anyone, because they're going to be on the eastern side of the storm. So not only do they run the risk of these isolated spin-up tornadoes, but looking at the computer models and the projected wind gusts, likely in many of those spots to get 65, 70, 75 mile per hour wind gusts coming through. So I think it's, one of the things that we always talk about is like the specific impacts, what's going to happen in your area. It's more than just that cone. It doesn't tell the entire story. And in some cases, being outside of the cone, just to the east of the cone with this storm moving north is actually worse than being on the the left or western side of the cone when it comes to winds, and we're anticipating even in Atlanta. You mentioned Alpharetta, northern suburb of Atlanta, in the metro. I think that many are going to see 50, 60 mile an hour winds. And to be honest, guys, when we get 40, 45 mile an hour winds after a couple of days of rain, we get a lot of trees that come down. So this could potentially be historic in terms of the number of trees that come down and the power outages that could unfortunately in some cases last for a while.
You know, that's so right. You know, it's interesting. And when I hear both of you guys speak about the storm and the impacts that could occur, I'm thinking, okay, you guys probably get worse than we get here along the west coast of Florida. And here we are, you know, right next to the storm, Category 4 storm. But in reality, more impacts, I think, are going to be felt across Georgia. And I think it will be a historic storm that will be retired, just based on what I'm seeing and the fact that it's heading toward a major metropolitan area. And as you said, not just the center, but the wide impact, Jamie, of the covering of the entire state of Georgia with tropical storm force winds. This is going to be a devastating storm for you. And we, on the other hand, the only thing we have to be concerned about here, that's the biggest concern, I should say, is storm surge. And we are under a storm surge warning. And that warning continues all the way up into the Big Bend area. And if you saw the 5 o'clock advisory, they have upped it now to a 20-foot storm surge expected near Appalachia Bay, all the way over to the Big Bend area. 20-foot storm surge. I don't think I've ever seen that except for Katrina, obviously, but not in Florida. Fort Myers with Ian had a 15-foot storm surge, and we lost 60 people because they failed to heed the warnings of the storm surge and the power of water. So as you said, Fred, I think people that focus on the cone, and you have to realize that Fort Myers wasn't in that cone for a while. You know, they say, well, I'm out of the cone, I'm okay. No, you're not, especially in this case, because everything seems to be here anyway, to the right of the center of the storm. So
let me touch on storm surge really quickly, because you talk about your storm surge on the west side of the Florida. We do have a 1 to 3 foot storm surge possibility in the coastal empire and low country. So that's Hilton Head all the way down to Brunswick, Georgia, which is right on the Florida-Georgia line. Tides are running about 7.5 feet. You add 2 feet to that, so that's 9.5 feet. Highway 80, which runs the road to Tybee Island, Georgia's beach, that would be just close to inundating the road out to the island. But we don't expect that. So anybody watching here on Facebook Live, we don't expect roadways to be impacted, but the marshes will be full. If you live on an island, Whitmarsh, et cetera, those waters will be encroaching if you live right on the marsh.
So yeah, pretty amazing. We've already had evacuations for all of our barrier islands in this area, Sarasota, Manatee, and all throughout the Tampa Bay area. Evacuations level A, level B, voluntary in Manatee County. What that means is that, you know, they're worried about people getting in harm's way if they stay out on the islands. And my advice, if people are watching right now and you're out in the islands debating whether you should or should not stay, you should not stay. Of course, we always say run from the water, right? It's becoming an old cliche, it seems like, but there's a lot of truth to it. And as we talked about yesterday, you know, it's the rainfall, the flooding, and it's going to be excessive. We had someone on yesterday, I believe, from South Carolina, and they were talking about the tremendous amount of flooding that's going to be happening in the mountains there, into East Tennessee and western portions of South Carolina, that this is going to be catastrophic, if you ask me, in terms of why that low is just going to kind of hang around there too. And Fred, maybe you can touch on that fact, that that low, although it won't be intense in 3-4 days from now, it's still going to be there enough to create rain and more flooding.
Well, thankfully, we're hopeful it'll be north of our area, so it'll just be scattered showers, and most of our rain from this is going to be over probably by about 9 o'clock on Friday morning. One of the things that I did want to speak to, though, is, and we really hope that people do heed the warnings, because this is hitting an area that has seen a couple of storms in very, very recent memory. But this one could be different, a slightly different approach angle. a slightly different landfall location as possible. And don't take this the wrong way for any viewers that are from Florida, but Floridians tend to be somewhat of a different breed when it comes to hurricanes. And I was talking to a friend of a friend was the mother of the bride for a Tallahassee wedding that was supposed to happen on Saturday. And I talked to them on Monday and I said, look, I said, this one's probably coming more or less right up over you or just to your west. And it could be strong. Oh, we're just hearing Category 2. And I said, I don't know if I would be going forward with this. And I said, the storm's going to be long gone by Saturday, but so may a lot of other things, including the electricity and some trees. And ultimately, to finish the anecdote, they did postpone the wedding. But in terms of our impacts up here, we're combining potentially one of the worst wind events from a tropical system on record here in Atlanta with a rainfall event that parallels one that happened in 2009 at the Six Flags area here just to the west of Atlanta. Historic flooding that people to this day, anyone who was here for it remembers it. It went on for days. They picked up, 12, 18 inches of rain from that. So we could have combined between the flooding and the wind, two of the more historic events moving through our area simultaneously. The flooding is bad enough, but then when you throw the wind into it, you mentioned the mountains, Northeast Georgia mountains, some beautiful homes up there on the lakes, and a lot of trees. And there's going to be a lot of wind late Thursday night, Friday morning. So anyone up there under the gun, looking at some of the computer model information for 70+ mile per hour winds screaming in out of the southeast and east southeast as that storm gets closer to us. So it is one of those situations. I've been doing this for a long time where we never hype a storm. We always just try to tell you what's going to happen. And this is one where can't reiterate it enough that this, to me, feels like Atlanta's Sandy. And I say that because I was in the Northeast when Sandy happened, and it was about a week ahead of time, started to look at the computer models and say, well, that's an odd track for a tropical system, but there was a consistency to it among the computer models. And it was about a week ago that we started to look at this one and say, well, that would be a really bad track for us if that came to fruition. And the consistency was there. So we have a situation here where a storm is taking a track that it does not normally take. And people have likened it to Opal back in 1995, but that storm went up through Alabama, did not come straight up over Metro Atlanta. It was a Category 3, I believe, at landfall. This one is projected to be a Category 4. So the bottom line is here, I've been telling everyone and doing my best to make sure that people are as prepared as they can be. Hope for the best.
Yeah, exactly. Hope for the best, man, and prepare for the worst. Before I let you go, because I know you got a newscast coming up here, I want to ask you one more question. What about it's a hub of a lot of travelers, obviously, with the airport there and all the airlines flying into it. What's going on with that real quickly? If you can just give me a minute on that. This is going to be a big delay with airlines.
Without a doubt. And this is the busiest airport in the world here, Hartsfield-Jackson. Super efficient, I will say that. I have not heard of any closure notifications pending or anything along those lines. My guess is that the airport will technically stay open, but we will not see much in the way of air traffic between about 9, 10, 11 o'clock tomorrow evening and early Friday morning. We're expecting the worst winds to come moving over Atlanta 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 o'clock in the morning on Friday. One of the things about tropical systems is once they're gone, they're gone. So assuming the airport doesn't take damage, assuming there's electricity and everything is functioning at the airport, the weather should improve very quickly on Friday to just a breezy day. And as I said, they are super efficient. One of the things, Bob and Jimmy, that you never really know is how are the airlines going to handle it? Because they don't necessarily want planes sitting on the tarmac here for days if there are major problems in Atlanta. So there will be residual impacts that'll be felt. So That's a question that I fielded a lot, Bob, in the last few days. Is I have a friend coming in, or I have, is someone's flying out, or can I make my flight? And I've been telling people if it's late Thursday or it's early Friday, probably isn't going to happen. After that, let's see what the impact is after the storm comes through.
Right, Campagna, we're gonna let you go. I appreciate your time. Excellent points and really good information there. We hope to do this again tomorrow. Again, we're going to continue on with this talk, though. I know you've got the business to do, Fred. Really good points, and we appreciate your time tonight to help explain what's going on.
Thank you so much for having me, Bob and Jamie, and you guys stay safe.
Yeah.
All right, you too. Stay safe is right. I think that's the key. And Jamie, you know, it's funny. You're going to experience the same thing we are in some respects. You got a storm surge. We got a storm surge. We got flooding. We could have some flooding. We're going to have tropical storm force winds and not hurricane force winds. So what have you been telling your folks to be doing out there during the height of the storm? I think I want to get that across to the people that, you know, it's important that they know that this is a serious situation.
So the height of the highest winds from Helene will be overnight, and hopefully people will be at home. I have a partner who works a third shift, so he's actually working from home. I'll be at the station, but people need to stay off the roadways. And honestly, today and yesterday, I really started saying we were going to have a 1-2 punch with this storm, because I anticipate the National Weather Service to put most of our viewing area under a tornado watch as early as tomorrow sunrise, and that'll last through a lot of the day. Any band moving in from Helene has the potential to produce a tornado, and so I think that's the scary unknown. We've been pretty consistent about our 50 to 60 mile per hour wind gusts, but that's going to be 11 p.m. through probably about 3 a.m. and then slack off as we head towards sunrise on Friday. But I think the day is the big kind of unknown with the heavy bands of rain, and we could have rain-wrapped tornadoes tomorrow.
Yeah, that is the scary part at nighttime too, obviously, and these tornadoes happen so quickly. I want people to know that there isn't a lot of warning time. Mm-hmm. And in a car or a vehicle or any kind of vehicle, it's very dangerous, because they are not the biggest and strongest tornadoes, but there are enough power and energy in them to turn cars over and to cause significant damage to structures too, on top of that. So the tornado warnings will happen quickly, and those tornadoes will be moving at an incredible rate of speed, to sometimes 40, 50 miles an hour. And there's little time to take warning. So you want to stay by your safe room and be able to duck into that. We've got a couple more people that joined us. Jamie, I want to introduce Yolanda, who is from Albany, I believe. And then that's, again, part of the Gray Media Group. And it looks like you are in for a serious ride, more so than Atlanta. How are you doing, Yolanda? And what is your take on the storm tonight? If you can hear me.
Can you hear me? Bruce Capps in New Orleans.
Okay, Bruce. Yes. Hey, Bruce, how are you? We'll get back to Yolanda. I think Yolanda just dropped off there. But anyway, Bruce, how's it going in New Orleans? You guys are watching this from a distance, obviously.
Right.
And seeing what's happening. A pretty amazing storm. What's your take on the storm itself, and how you guys feeling? Your big storm, too.
Right. We just went through Francine, and fortunately it kind of dried out on the southern end, but we had a lot of flooding. We're below sea level, and that's a major issue. But I was going to mention to Atlanta that the New Orleans Saints are playing the Falcons in Atlanta Sunday. So, you know, a lot of people are driving, you know, on I-10 and then heading north to Atlanta. And, you know, the message for me tonight has been, if you're driving to Atlanta, you really need to check in, because some of the roadways, as you start eastward, you know, you may have trees down, you may have power outages. You know, if you have an electric car, you may not have the ability to charge it. You know, so that's kind of been my message. Fortunately, you know, unfortunately, it's a storm that's got to hit somewhere. Hopefully it hits in the, you know, the kind of the wildlife refuges, the Big Bend, with hopefully not a lot of population, but, you know, it's landlocked and it's got to go somewhere. But, you know, my message has been that. I mean, the only really impact for us is going to be some high seas coming in off of, you know, the eastern boot of, you know, Lower Plaquemines. We have parishes, you guys have counties. You know, so we're going to have, you know, some gale warnings that affect just offshore. You know, we're a very big fishing community, sportsman's paradise, and, you know, we do that. So naturally, boats don't go out, let this thing go by. By Sunday, we'll start getting, you know, a reprieve. But really, on the back end, we're going to see some gorgeous weather. I feel it's kind of like, that survivor's guilt. We went through Francine, which was bad, but, we're going to actually get a front end and, lower humidity and a little taste of fall for the first time in New Orleans.
Yeah, it's funny, Bruce. Bruce Katz, right? Bruce Katz from New Orleans. We got
WVOE.
Okay, Fox 8, right? Fox 8.
Yeah.
All right, Yolanda, can you hear us now?
Yes. Can you hear
great
me?
Great points, by the way, Bruce, about the driving and going to the game. If Atlanta gets hit that hard, there are going to be some problems and issues traveling through Atlanta and through Albany as well. So keep that in mind. Take heed as far as that goes. And Yolanda, I know you're in the path of this thing. I think this is, as we heard earlier from, again, Fred, this could be a historic storm for Georgia.
Well, definitely so. We haven't had a storm of this magnitude to come into the area. I think the one that folks here remember is Matthew. And this is nothing like Matthew. It's going to be even more intense. And I guess what really boggled me a bit was the 5 p.m. advisory with a Cat 4 coming right into South Georgia. And which is, utterly amazing. And also the extensive size of the storm, it's expansive. So whether, we're in the direct path in terms of the eye coming on top of us or further off toward the east, I think the impacts are basically going to be the same. With any storm anyway, you can say, well, the storm is coming on top of you, but then the higher impacts are far away from the center of circulation. So it's going to be, heart-wrenching, and especially knowing what types of devastation can result as come out of this massive storm.
Well,
Yolanda, what market are you in?
WALB in Albany.
Oh, in Albany, okay.
Yeah, Southwest Georgia.
Hopefully it'll weaken a bit. It's going to be moving quickly, so I think the impacts into almost Atlanta as the Cat 1. So moving over you guys, it's a fast mover, and being that strong, it's going to take a while to ramp down. So, you're right. You guys, you're in for it, and it's interesting, to add to this that this is the first year that the Hurricane Center put inland watches and warnings out, and I think that was a great move because we always see it along the coast, and then now that you see with us, with Francine, our parishes, and you all with counties, it really kind of highlights that, oh, wow, my county is under a warning. So I think it heightens the attention level, too.
Excellent
point. Well, I surely hope so, because we are under a hurricane warning right now. And I think, I tried to stress, this is something we've never had before. And, hopefully to heighten the urgency in being prepared.
I've never seen it
actually show. Oh, go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, I'm sorry. I was just going to say I've never seen that before. That hurricane warning that far into Georgia, and Jamie, I got to tell you that I think I see most of the state of Georgia is in blue.
Yeah,
indicating on my map at least a tropical storm warning. Mm-hmm. So I think this could be the biggest storm in history, really, for Georgia if it continues on that course.
Historically for the state, yes. All of our storms are basically based off of Hurricane Matthew, which was a Cat 2, which made a 12-mile glancing blow off of Tybee Island and made landfall just south of Charleston. So Charleston just 127 miles away from us. But so this is a historical storm, not necessarily as impactful as Matthew, but for the state, yes.
Yeah, and Bruce, you were going to say something?
No, I was going to say, during Francine, the greater New Orleans area, Orleans Parish, Jefferson Parish, some of the biggest populated parishes, I actually highlighted that and, said, if you're under that orange, that's our color palette for, the hurricane warning, that, you need to pay attention. And it's something I had to kind of educate the public on, that these inland warnings now are to bring a heightened alert as well. When you see it and you see your parish or county in it, I think it really, gives you more of a, wow, we really need to pay more attention to it than along the coast, because people would think, oh, along the coast it's going to be bad. But like in Georgia, it basically is up to the Tennessee border. The entire state is blue. And to me, when you see that, I think it heightens even people people in central and north Georgia, it just heightens that alert of, wow, this could really be bad, as opposed to just, your counties with no flooded colors indicating a watch or a warning.
Great point. Great point. I got to tell you, Bruce, them doing that, and we are doing that obviously with the cone and all the different counties in our entire state. And we use blue for the tropical storm warning is in that. It used to be you see the cone with the some symbol and you think, okay, we're out of the cone, we're okay. But no, this really highlights the fact, and I think people need to, and I think they're understanding that, hey, listen,
Sure.
The cone is good to let us know where the storm's going, but it's not as good to let us know what's going to happen because of that. And Yolanda, I got to tell you that we're praying for you there. It looks like you're going to take the brunt of the storm of all of us right here, and it doesn't look good. But I want to let people know who are watching this online streaming. We also broadcast it on our newscast, little pieces of it and snippets of it. I want people to know that they have a great team here in the Gray Network called the Gray Media Group, that if any of us lose power, that other stations in our network will pick up that signal and broadcast it to that local area. In fact, I know during some storms, we position people into other markets so that if we do lose power here or the ability to broadcast, that we can then use that facility of our network to broadcast to our local market the necessary information that they're going to need. And that's an excellent tool to have. Not a lot of stations have that ability. And I think it really is a thumbs up to the Gray Media Network and the Gray Media Group that we're able to do that.
Let me just give props to Yolanda, because Yolanda's been through a major tornado, Adele, Georgia. You've been through Michael, and now you're going through this and little other tornado events that I'm sure were big for your community. But you are a pro, and everybody watching who is in your viewing area should be very grateful to have you, honestly.
Oh, thank you. I appreciate that.
Yes, stay safe up there. Hey, you guys, I got to get going. This has been great. Again, if you're watching this, we're going to continue this as much as we can, obviously, through the storm and any other storms. And I think you guys have seen it. There's a couple of other storms out there trying to develop in the Atlantic, one with a real good chance developing. But I think, as you probably do as well, that the season is far from over, and we still have the possibility of big storms in the month of October.
Yay!
All right, guys, y'all take care. Good luck. Good luck to you guys in the
bad
back.
news.
Thank you. Thank you.
Good
Anyway,
night.
thanks a lot for joining us, and we appreciate it. Good night, everybody.
Good night.